have kids, this may be bringing back happy memories. Other of you, this is a freebie if you have them in the future. So we're going to just bend our knees, because I don't want to knacker anybody's backs. And we're going to swing like a very arthritic David Beckham, but that's the only mention of the football. Right, here we go. And down we go. So a lovely slow movement. And we're now going to get very technical. We're now going to add some labour breathing. But no one's going to have to move like a cow. We're not going to do that bit. We're going to do very, very early labour breathing. And what I remember from the sciencey stuff is that it takes 4 minutes when I'm labouring. The average woman in labour goes through 2,500 calories. Probably worth it for that alone. So 2,500. So I know that it takes 4 minutes for my breath, if I'm labouring, to go around my body, into my uterine muscles that are working very hard, and to my baby. So 4 minutes for my breath to get to my baby. So that tells me that it needs to be quite a deep, relaxed breath, doesn't it? But if I tell you all to breathe in, to take a big deep breath, what are we all going to do? We won't do that at all. We'll have a shallow breath. So we're going to, if in doubt, breathe out. Here we go. So let's focus on having a nice big out breath. Lovely. Very good. We'll do it again. Now I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to be very competitive with myself. I'm going to try and make the next out breath even longer. And this is quite good because it's calmed me down. Hopefully it's given you a bit of a refresher from sitting down. If I had a little baby who was crying, this is a good grandma trick. Maybe you don't have to do the swaying bit, but the grandma trick bit is take a few deep breaths, calm yourself down, and then you take the baby. And babies read your breath, they mimic your breath. So if you're like this, please stop crying, please stop crying. Your baby will think there's something really big to cry about, won't they? Because they're like this and shaky. If you take your couple of labour breaths, and then you pick up a baby, much more likely to settle them. So should we all sit down and I'll try and work out how this works. So, I don't have a clicker. While we're working it, is this the clicker? Which way forward? That one. So, I'll come down. So, I didn't want to disappoint you by feeling that you hadn't been a bit of an antenatal class. The National Childbirth Trust we are now the biggest provider of antenatal education, but we like to think of it as parenting education. I'm not a baby, don't tell anyone. In the UK, which I suppose is a sign of our times, but most women now don't get offered, and their partners don't get offered antenatal classes from the NHS. And so we see 70,000 people a year, a fifth of whom are on free places, and the others who are paying. And so that's a huge opportunity. And we call it a teachable moment, which I'm sure we've nicked from other people, in the sense that one of the things I loved about here was, when I did my MSc, was that it wasn't about pathology. It was about normality and pathology. And we get people at the National Childbirth Trust in the UK when they're about to enter this huge transition, this huge journey. Most people we see are having their first baby, and it's a really important teachable moment. And no matter how they feel, what their relationship experienced previously, everyone's in the same boat, thinking about how to negotiate some of the things we've been talking about this morning and this afternoon. So we get people and we treat them all looking at some of the principles we were thinking of. And one of the reasons I brought this out, does anyone know what this is? Fantastic, fantastic. I'm not even going to repeat it. This is the Western gynecoid pelvis. This is the female pelvis. I'm very lucky I have two. And this one is a very effective piece of kit because it's responsible for the majority more live births than other forms of pelvis. There's 3 other different types of female pelvises in the world. And we used to spend a lot of time in antenatal classes focusing on these. Pelvises. Dolly's going through pelvises. Anyone know what one of these? Recognise this? My son usually wears it as a medal. But yeah, it's a placenta. And women are very clever. They make an extra organ when they're pregnant. In fact, placentas are a lot bigger than this. They're the size of a dinner plate. And they look like liver. And the umbilical cord's twice the size of this, about 2 to 4 metres long. So we used to do a lot of that. And we still have lots of toys and things that we introduce to parents. But the thing I wanted to spend 10 minutes talking to you about was the work I had done, which was informed by the work I did at the Anna Freud Centre. I sat on an expert reference group along with colleagues from the NSPCC, set up by the Department of Health, about how we can use this amazing opportunity that we get so many parents who are just about to start their voyage in terms of parenthood, and how we could think them more, help them think more about parenting. Because what we know in the UK may be very different from the countries you're from, is it's notoriously difficult to go to parenting classes, get people to go to parenting classes. They're often associated with pathology, being a bad parent, something social services makes you do. I was involved in a trial in Camden that the government ran for free parenting classes, and the take-up, we had about 30 parents out of 15,000 that were targeted who would come forward for free parenting classes once they had their babies. They're much more interested in baby Cantonese and baby Taekwondo and sort of the race for nowhere, which is North London parenting, rather than coming and thinking about the experience of being a parent. So we thought, well, we get people, we have 5 2-hour sessions before they have their baby and 1 2-hour session afterwards. What we could do with that based on evidence-based process. So we've been transforming our courses. So here we go. I'm sure Saul will make these slides available to you, so please you don't have to read through all of those. But the last government commissioned some big studies in terms of looking what made for effective parenting. And that was the basis for our work. And then this very miserable man, Frank Field, miserable in that picture, maybe not all the time, also made the point that poverty is a much more subtle enemy than purely lack of money. And we know in the NCT that although we get to see women and men from huge varieties, we have a bit of a reputation, maybe a bit unfair, as a dating agency for yummy mummies and nappy daddies. That 92% of our people say the main reason they come to NCT classes is to meet their postnatal support group. Because although we're all very connected these days, we're not actually very connected in our community. We don't know that 3 doors down is somebody else who's just about to have their new baby, who actually it would be quite a good idea to get to know them. So it's an incredibly important thing we do. But that was one of the reasons we partnered with the NSPCC, who's much stronger in terms of working with people who are referred through agencies. And we also, through NCT Professional, we train about 3,000 midwives and health visitors a year in terms of how to run parenting classes. Also, we have I thought everybody's going to have a brain scan slide, so I thought I should put one as well, but mine's not in colour. But I'm sure you're all very well aware, and Graham Allen, who's another politician in this country, did an important report on how important it was based on one of these reports that always is, neuroscience says, and so we should justify funding money on it. So that was the Neuroscience Says report. So we also have lots of epidemiological research, all about how important the stress levels, the status of mummies, in particular before baby is born, in terms of those long-term health outcomes and indicators for baby. And the one thing that it was hung a lot on was this idea of maternal health literacy. This is a big quote, but basically what came out of that study was that there's a huge amount of information available to new parents. Last time I looked on Amazon, there were 2,500 baby books in print. And if anybody wants a ski lodge in Aspen or a home in the Hamptons, writing a baby book is a very effective way to do it, because they're huge sellers, and in the NCT, we don't really like baby books. They're often guilt books, which are telling you to get up, put your makeup on before you wake your baby, and telling you what you should do when you should do it. which are quite shouty books, and then there are also books in terms of which are quite frightening to read if you're just about to have a baby. Some of them written by people here and who've come through here, which are very effective and based on good research, but I remember I was pregnant when I did the MSc here, and sometimes reading those papers, reading that research felt like an overwhelming task, that I was just about to walk on this thing, and how many ghosts were going to be haunting my children's nurseries. So it's what we found is it's really difficult for parents to make their way through this, and there's a lot of people telling them what to do. And coming back to that those 2,500 books, I don't know. I'm sort of doubtful whether they're all based on the same sort of randomised controlled trial, evidence-based information, just written in different styles with different front covers. I think there's a lot of stuff which doesn't have much basis. My personal favourite you get a lot when you work for the MCT, but that babies can't see in colour, which is why you have to buy all those toys in black and white. So they're like cats and dogs. That babies have to be taught how to sleep. So there's lots of things that are put out to encourage people to buy things. So we reviewed our antenatal education in this country, and we worked with the Department of Health. And what we came up to is that we needed to focus more on emotional changes and skill-based, rather than spending so much time thinking about labour and how it was going to be in hospital. All those things are important. Trying to encourage people, I suppose we could say it here, to mentalise, to think about their baby as a person, to think about what it's going to be like to be a parent, and how of doing that. So we've really been moving our courses towards that model. So this is our little table, and we're currently in the process of retraining. We have 2,000 practitioners who work as NCT facilitators, and working them away from this model where there was lots of teaching people how to change a nappy, and to really thinking about what strengths do we have now as parents? How do we manage our exhaustion now? If anyone can remember clubbing, what did they used to do clubbing, transatlantic flights? How could you apply that to the exhaustion that having a new baby is? Pulling out from people what they know already, they know about themselves, to help them, rather than giving them a template of how to be a parent. Focusing on intrinsic motivation, not what they're told should be important to them as a parent, but what is important to them as a parent. Why did they want this baby? Or if they found out they were pregnant, why they decided to stay on this road being a parent. And also less directing, more guiding. We call it sources of support when we talk to parents, but how parents can bring together their ways of supporting each other. So, and this is just really the characteristics of the classes now. And they're responsive to both parents. Interestingly, in London, we have much higher attendance from male partners than we do who are women who are pregnant, to the whole of an antenatal course, which is interesting in terms of the changing profile of working patterns. They're participative, so there's a lot less than this, and there's quite a lot of standing up and doing that sort of stuff, and flip charting at 9:30 at night in a church hall. And focusing on this transition to parenthood. What changes are making at the moment? Because a lot of people feel very omnipotent. There's a word I learnt here, in terms of what it's going to be like in terms of having a baby. And we call it in the NCT having a baby handbag. But our life isn't going to change, it's just going to be like having a baby in a handbag. And I'm trying to break down that to help preparing people. And recognising the importance of social support, but also making sure it's relevant. It's relevant to their lives and their lifestyles and the choices they think they're going to make, which is one of the reasons we're very lucky we work in small groups. So we'll only have 8 couples, 16 parents there, and we spend a lot of time making sure that we have people from the right postcodes coming together at the same time, to help encourage that sense of identity for them. So these are some of the things we do in terms of helping people to think about their babies. We have a lot of clients who will not only go for 2 or 3 scans. One of the benefits or maybe disbenefits of being booked in with big London teaching hospitals is that there's lots of people training to be specialist radiographers. So people get to have many more scans than they would outside of London. So they feel they know a lot about their baby because they have a picture. You go to Harley Street, you can go and have a 4D scan and a 3D scan. And there's one now that's offering a 5D scan. And I have no idea what the 5th dimension is. I think the 4th dimension is sound. But the 5th dimension, maybe that's one Philip K. Dick, who we heard of before, in terms of sci-fi. So there are people who are paying £700 in Harley Street to have a 5D scan of their baby. So they think they know a lot about their baby, but in terms of engaging with their bump, we work with lots of women who are working very hard, who've never felt their baby kick. And actually doing that exercising, breathing deeply, slowing things down a bit, and then sitting down for a couple of minutes, they can suddenly feel their baby kick. At 7 months pregnant, they've not felt it before, because who knows, their mind is somewhere else. So we give them an opportunity to start making connections, which isn't something they've paid for or been given, but something that they're experiencing inside them, and about how special and how personal that experience is. And we give them some of the science behind it as well. We play a lot of music which came from another part of UCL, listening to what a baby would hear, Beethoven's 5th Symphony in the womb, which sort of freaks the baby's mind, because it's a baby listening to a baby listening to Beethoven's 5th Symphony. But that means they can hear how important their heartbeat is. So my heartbeat at the moment is going like that. So if I had a baby there, my baby would realise that something was going on, because normally it's a bit more like that. And it gives them things to think about in terms of that their mood will have an effect on their baby now, and may well have an effect on their baby when they're with their baby and their baby's outside of the womb. We talk about deep pressure and light, and how the hug of their baby helps to prepare their baby to meet them in terms of getting into a good position to meet them in terms of labour. So it's all about trying to make the experience of being pregnant less of a medical experience, but an experience in terms of a relationship. And this, Anne Bradley works at Oxford, and she's done a lot of good work which we've helped her with in terms of looking at anthropological aspects of being pregnant. And this again is stressing that the vulnerability is often to postnatal distress is people whose expectations are very different. And certainly we see this quite a lot, not wholly, but often with people who've had a bit of help getting pregnant, who've had artificial insemination, maybe because the expectations that this baby's going to be perfect, it's been longed for so long, and baby comes out and still poos and wakes up in the middle of the night and still vomits over your best cashmere sweater if you're foolish enough to wear one while you're looking after your baby. So again, it's important to try and get people to think about what it's going to be like to have a new baby, to help prepare themselves for this, and to maybe to give them a bit of resilience. And one of the reasons I like this quote is that there's a lot of pathologising goes on in early years of having a baby, and this seemed to be a very normal but a very brave thing to admit, that it took this mum at least a week and a half to realise that her baby was actually hers and that it actually had changed her life. There's a lot of people who will talk about trying to find the pause button so they can go back to their world and then take the pause button off again and then go back to being mum or dad again. And that it's like any relationship, sometimes it takes time. And a lot of the time that this can feel pathologised if you admit it to a health professional, but we try and talk about how it's a relationship, it's a dance. There's good days, there's bad days, there's times you don't like them very much, there's times you love them very much. And we also spend a lot of time working with fathers in terms of expectations for babies. It's one of the areas that's changed so much in modern life in terms of the expectations for dads. If we talk to the fathers we now see about their dads, I remember when I was here watching one of the videos about a little boy who was left in a nursing home and the distress and the big teddy bear. And that, it doesn't feel like that was too long ago, maybe it was, but that little boy was left there because his mum was having a baby, and so he got left in a nursing home. My dad certainly got a phone call and got an hour to visit when I was born, and didn't get any paternity leave, whereas now men are expected, there's high expectations in terms of being involved with parenting, which for most of us we will think is a good leave. Most men will have some element of paid parenting leave, but it's a very different role. There aren't models in the generation above about how to negotiate this, how to be a father. So we look at that. So I realise we're coming out of time, but only 1 in 5 couples say their relationships get better after a baby is born, and 2 in 3 say. So the next 2 are the contraceptive slides for anyone. And it's one of the things that we think about a lot in terms of when we're devising courses and looking at curriculum, is how honest to be about that. That most people find it very difficult, and find it difficult for their relationship when they have a first baby. I always think we should have a mirror slide saying, but how much you love your baby and how much you love your children. But we have that one. And then this is the list of things that one of the groups I worked with recently who came up with when I said relationship roller coaster to them. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that, because it's quite depressing really, isn't it? And then we also try and get people to predict their styles. This is quite a common one that we use in terms of allocating work when new babies are born. And it's very interesting how rare it is to have parents before babies are born who both come out with the same principle. So both who are, we each do the things we can't stand not being done principle. But again, it's a way of trying to get people to think about what life is going to be like. We also do bring in elements in terms of research. So we look at brain pruning, we look at why your baby is often much more miserable when they come from hospital. When they are at hospital they seem lively, they smile at you, they give you eye contact, they put their tongue out, and then you get them home and they're really moody, they don't look at you anymore. And so we use that as a way of talking about brain pruning. We have fruit bowls in which people put fruit in different order in terms of, and then match different things babies can do at different times, and that's to represent the brain. So we keep trying to think of different ways of being able to get people to start thinking about these things. And this is my last slide in terms of, I think most people who come to our classes, this is their main question, which I think comes from somebody a bit more who's thought about this a lot as well. Can we be good enough? People are often very frightened when they're about to meet their baby about how to be good enough. And we often split people into groups and think about the needs of what. Because becoming a parent, having a baby, is a very profound experience, but it's a very profound private and public experience. And there are lots of people who have needs to be met, whose needs are to be juggled as well. And we hope that by giving people 15 hours of the space to start thinking about this, what it's going to be like, hopefully we give them some tools, we give them some resilience to deal with the mental challenges of becoming a parent. And we also give them the opportunity of forming a self-sustaining, supporting group. And just to finish off, one of the things that's lovely about my job is that I get invited to first birthday parties, second birthday parties, third birthday parties, and because of the nature of London, people fly in from America for their NCT group, or from Australia for their NCT group birthday parties, and are still supporting each other. And as Mary said this afternoon, a lot of this stuff in terms of self-support and helping people doesn't necessarily need to be done on a couch. It can be done in a pub, having a party, sharing stories and experiences, and normalising what can be a huge change for people. Thank you very much.